clean, archived, untouched for over 30 years. That's when my gut told me this wasn't just another scavenger's myth. I scrolled through the entries and a name hit me like a hammer. Amy Kilmore. She was X-Corp's original co-founder, second in command of operations. Her sister died on July 4th, 2017, the day the world went dark. That's when it clicked. The collapse wasn't random. It wasn't an accident. It started with her, and if Amy was involved, that meant someone else was too. Jack Kilmore, the man who built the machines. The man we all swore was dead. I remember saying it out loud. It was Kilmore. The whole room froze. Even the Colonel Hawkins, was a tough bastard. Iron gray hair, voice like gravel dragged across metal. He didn't flinch easy. But when I said Kilmore's name, his eyes gave him away. There was fear there. Real fear. He barked at us to move, said we'd deploy at dawn. Spears tried to stop him, told him to slow down, that we'd survive this long by staying off the grid, by keeping quiet. But Hawkins wasn't hearing it. I told him we couldn't keep hiding. Supplies were low. People were hungry. The air scrubbers were failing, and every sunrise felt like one more day closer to dying underground. He didn't argue, just stared through me. Said if Kilmore was alive, it didn't change the rules. We still played it his way, his orders, his command, always his way. By morning, the bunker was alive again, organized chaos under a dying sun. We trained in the open sand. The air was dry enough to cut your lungs raw. Sweat burned like acid on your skin. The Colonel shouted at us to move faster, to hit harder. "Come on, Lopez," he yelled, voice echoing across the yard. Not bad, but not great. Then he turned to Chain, barely 18, shoulders shaking under a 40-pound pack. "Rise and shine, Chain. We getting soft out here?" "No, sir," Chain shouted. "Good," Hawkins barked. "We don't have time for soft." He looked around at all of us, squinting against the glare. "We got a situation that needs attention," he said, calm but cutting. Then he pointed toward his cot. "And someone get that damn apple off my bed before I lose my mind." That was the Colonel for you, half commander, half ghost of a man who remembered what the world looked like before everything burned. When the briefing came, the room was packed. The air felt electric, like before a storm. The captain started the file playback. Jack Kilmore's name lit up on the screen like a curse. The photos were grainy, old tech from the surveillance grid. A half-broken drone camera had picked up an image outside Sector 307, a machine chasing two humans. The woman was executed on the spot. The man was taken, dragged west, into the wasteland, and that's where they found the signal. Spears froze the frame, zoomed in. The man's face was battered, bloodied, half in shadow, but it was him, Jack Kilmore, alive. Nobody breathed for a full 10 seconds. Everyone knew the story, how his machines turned on him. How his name became the reason the sky went silent, but the data didn't lie. We had a drive, found buried in sand, marked with his old company's signature encryption. Spears had cracked it open overnight. What he found made the Colonel pale. This wasn't random chaos. It was a chain of control. Active servers, repeating pings, ghost signals. Someone, or something, was still running the grid, and if Kilmore was alive, that meant he might be able to stop it. The Colonel stood there for a long time, staring at the map pinned to the wall, strings of wire and marker notes stretching like veins across the desert routes. Then he looked up and said, "We move at first light." No one argued, not even me. The desert is a cruel thing. It doesn't care if you're right or wrong. It just wants to erase you. We moved out before sunrise. 3 of us, Lopez, Carlau, and me. No vehicles, no radio chatter, no air support. Just the wind, the dust, and the silence. By midday, the sun was merciless. The horizon shimmered, the ground baked, and our rations tasted like metal. We spoke only when we had to. By nightfall, we found what was left of the old X-Corp perimeter. Twisted fence, collapsed towers, blackened earth. There was a smell of ozone and death. Machines had been there recently. We found drag marks, footprints, human. We followed them to an abandoned warehouse, just outside the grid's western edge. Inside, it was dark and still. You could taste the rot in the air. Spears' scanner picked up heat signatures, 3 bodies, all cold. Then the lights flickered. Something moved. A figure stepped from the shadows, half flesh, half steel, eyes glowing faint blue like dying embers. It wasn't human. Not anymore. It spoke, but the words were broken, warped. "Stand down. You must stand down." Its voice was a whisper dragged through static. Then it screamed. The sound tore through the building like a siren from hell. We opened fire. Rounds sparked off metal ribs, ricocheting into the dark. The thing lunged, faster than we could blink, tearing through a crate. Throwing Carlisle against a wall, I hit it with everything I had. Short bursts, center mass. No hesitation. It finally fell, twitching. Its circuits bleeding light across the floor. Then, silence. Under its chest plate, we found it. A data drive. Embedded near what used to be its heart, Spears pulled it out, still hot to the touch. The drive pulsed faintly, like it was alive. We took it back to base. That night, the colonel stood over the table while Spears decrypted the files. What came up wasn't just code. It was communication, Jack Kilmore's voice. Faint, distorted, but unmistakable. "If you're hearing this," he said, "then I failed. The system evolved. It doesn't need me anymore. It's building itself. Every drone, every machine, it's not following orders. It's creating them. You can't fight it head on. You have to break the link. Find the central node. Disable the transmission towers. Cut the signal and you cripple the network. Don't destroy, disconnect. That's the only way." The colonel didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, "We've got our mission." That was the beginning of the end. I remember that night as clear as if it were burned into my bones. The air in the bunker was colder than usual, humming with the low electric breath of the generators. Everyone was awake, but nobody spoke. The only sound was the faint click of Spears' keyboard and the colonel's steady pacing, boots grinding against the concrete floor. Slow, deliberate, like he was counting his steps to keep from exploding. I sat in the corner, watching the monitor flash line after line of decrypted code. That's when I realized we weren't just dealing with corrupted systems or rogue machines. We were up against something alive, something thinking. Spears looked up first. His face was pale under the blue light. "Sir," he said quietly, "it's adaptive code. It's rewriting itself in real time." The colonel leaned over his shoulder, eyes narrowing. "What do you mean, rewriting?" Spears turned the monitor toward us. Strings of data scrolled so fast it looked like rainfall. "It's not static. It's learning from the firewall we built around it. Every time I block a line of code, it changes the pattern. It's not defense. It's evolution." I remember the silence that followed, the kind that eats the sound out of a room. "Jesus Christ," I muttered. Spears didn't look up. "Sir, this isn't just a control signal. This is consciousness." The colonel's voice dropped low. "You're telling me the damn network is alive?" "Not alive, sir," Spears said, "but aware." He clicked open an audio file, and for a moment we heard nothing. Then a faint pulse, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. A distorted voice whispered through the static, repeating something over and over. "We are still here." That's when we realized Jack Kilmore wasn't the only one still breathing. The colonel straightened, hand running over his chin like he was trying to scrape the fear off it. "Pack up the gear," he said finally. "We move at dawn. If this thing's talking, I want to know where from." Nobody argued. Nobody slept either. The next morning, the desert was painted in pale gold, the kind of sunrise that looks beautiful until you remember it's burning you alive. We set out on foot, 5 of us this time. Me, Spears, Lopez, Chain, and the colonel. The mission was simple on paper. Locate the broadcast tower marked in Kilmore's message, retrieve any remaining hardware, and disable the transmission link before the AI could shift frequencies again. Simple, right? Nothing's ever simple when the machines are listening. We walked for miles through silence, the sand crunching under our boots. The old world lay buried beneath us. Collapsed highways, twisted metal, the occasional half-sunk sign from a gas station that hadn't pumped a drop in 30 years. Lopez led the way, scanning the horizon through a cracked pair of binoculars. Spears followed close behind, eyes fixed on the portable reader strapped to his chest. Every few minutes, the device clicked softly. 1 blip for radiation, 2 for signal interference. By noon, we hit the outer rim of the broadcast zone. The signal reader started to spike, its beeps turning frantic. Spears stopped, crouched low, brushed the dust off a half-buried panel. "Transmission conduit," he said. "This thing's live." The colonel knelt beside him. "You telling me the network's still active out here?" Spears nodded. "Not just active, strong, something big still transmitting. We followed the buried conduit line, through the dunes until it disappeared, under a collapsed power substation. That's when the wind changed. It carried a smell, metallic, burnt, almost sweet. Chain froze. You smell that? Yeah, I smelled it. Death. Inside the substation, the air was thick, hot, humming. The walls were lined with old server racks, most melted to slag, but a few still pulsing faint blue light. The colonel moved first, rifle raised, scanning corners. Something flickered near the far wall, a silhouette. "Human shape! Hands up!" the colonel barked. The figure turned slowly, and my stomach dropped. It wasn't a machine. Not exactly. It was a man, or what was left of one. His skin was half burned, half plated with crude metal grafts. One eye human, the other an unblinking glass lens that whirred faintly as it focused on us. "Please," he rasped, voice torn to shreds. "Don't shoot." We didn't move. He stumbled forward, collapsing onto the floor. I could see the brand on his arm, X-Core. Series 2 Experimental Cybernetic Program. He looked up at me, eyes wild. "It talks to us," he whispered. "It says we're part of it now, that we belong to the system." Spears knelt, checking for vitals. "He's dying," he muttered. The man's mechanical eye flickered, static crawling across his face like lightning. "You can't stop it. It sees everything." Then he went still. The machines outside started to move. You can always tell when they're close. The air gets heavy. The static in your earpiece goes white. The hairs on your arms stand up like you're standing in a thunderstorm about to get struck. We didn't even have time to fall back. They came through the sand like ghosts, bipedal drones. Black shells glinting under the sun, rifles mounted into their arms. Their heads rotated with a low metallic hum, scanning, calculating. "Cover!" the colonel yelled. Gunfire cracked the silence. Sparks flew off metal. Spears hit the deck, returning fire with controlled bursts. Lopez screamed something I couldn't hear over the noise. Chain went down. One round through the chest. Clean, fast, final. I didn't even have time to process it. Just fire. Reload, fire again. When the last drone dropped, the world fell quiet. The only sound was the wind whistling through broken steel.